I want to read that again because it'll tie right into what we're talking about here. Hatred and the spirit of sacrifice are nourished by the image of enslaved ancestors rather than that of the liberated grandchildren. In other words, what I put here in my that's a quote from a book called Illuminations by Walter Benjamin. I haven't read that book, but the quote was instructive. And I put here, I say, they that use hate, they like to use hate as a lever to control you. It's a hook in the mouth to reel you into their program. All right. What's good, y'all? This is Robert Jenkins. I'm coming to you now with episode 103 of the Focus LBK show. Man, I've been kind of busy lately. I've been doing a lot of traveling, just kind of recuperating from that and getting back into the swing of things. And I've been thinking about this publication a lot. And I think I have mentioned this before, but kind of wanted to let y'all know, man, what I have been thinking about the Focus LBK show. One thing I'm not thinking about when it comes to the Focus LBK show is quitting. And in fact, I feel like we are just about to enter our third season of the show. This is season 2, episode 103. Very shortly here, we'll be in season 3, and I think it'll be somewhere around episode 105, if I'm not mistaken, doing public math off the top of the dome. But you know what? When it comes to doing a show like this and doing something over time, you always want to refine it and try to make it better and better and better. And the thing that I'm realizing is when you refine yourself, you refine your show, refine your thing, your shtick, the thing you do, you want to refine it in ways that reflect your mission. So you don't want to just be making refinements and correcting things and making this better and sharpening that, only to find out that it doesn't help you accomplish your mission. And so I was thinking the other night, and one of the things that occurred to me, a thought from my moon mind, if you will, if some of y'all are familiar with my other publication, which I have to say it's sadly neglected. I'm so busy, I don't have the time to do what I want to do on that publication, Thoughts from My Moon Mind. But one of the thoughts from my moon mind recently was on how to further refine the Focus LBK show. And I was thinking about, well, what is your mission? And, you know, you can look down on there on the Focus LBK show page, and it says that we're an arc of information for the people of West Texas, news and views from Lubbock, Texas, USA, what's going on and things to do, local music and art. And that's all true. What I really want to do is what occurred to me the other day about what my mission is. In addition to raising the level of discourse or conversation in the community, it just occurred to me that I personally am what you might call a binder historically. What I mean by that is I feel like it is just my personality and my love for history, the fact that I grew up with older people. Like if you listen to Mr. Cosby Morton, who has been on this show before, been on there twice now, as a matter of fact, once with his own episode and once on our Stop What Can We Do About the Violence? I think that was episode 100. Mr. Morton tells us about how he knows his grandparents used to till a field with a mule. They used to plow a field using a mule. His grandpa, I think he said. And when he talks, you fully understand that he is a throwback, a binder, an historical placeholder. He remembers a time when very few other people who are alive today remember. And that's important. And I was thinking about my role and what do I do? What is my focus and my mission? And I've always understood that it had something to do with history. When I was a college student, I studied history. My degree is in history. I have a degree in history with a minor in Spanish, actually. And I say all this to say that thinking about what my mission is and which ways I want to refine the Focus LBK show in the near future, and it has to do with historical mindedness. That's super important. I see it. I see being a historical binder, a binder to the past. I see that as being immensely important for the simple fact that you can just look around us today and see that we are completely unmoored as a society, unmoored as a world, as a nation. From the household to the block to the city to the nation to the planet, we seem to have just lost our minds when it comes to those things which help us keep our mind, which is the traditions of our ancestors, the traditions of our elders. These are the things that they're not there to be cast away willy-nilly. You don't just throw away these. It's not just the ways of old folks. It's not just old fogey ideas. The past serves an important purpose, and the past gives us context on today. The past also tells us how to understand today. A lot of times things from the past, like the Bible or the writings of the founding fathers, people will say, oh, those things are outdated. Those things are, people who say that clearly to me have never read those documents or never delved seriously into them, because you can look at some of these documents that are supposedly old and out of date. The writings of old dead white men, they call them, which I guess would include the Bible. Paul was Greek, wasn't he? Was he a Gentile? The point I'm making is these people had insight that helps us today. Our ancestors, our very ancestors, right here in the city of Lubbock, right here in Texas, right here in wherever your ancestors may be from, keeping alive their memory is an important thing, because first of all, that's a repository of strength for you. Your ancestors' behaviors, your ancestors' will to overcome, especially black people in the United States. We like to look at slavery as being only a negative thing. And truly, it was negative, obviously. I want to make that quick note that everybody had slavery on the planet at the time. During the same time that the United States had slaves, for that and the previous 2,000 years before that, every human society ever anywhere had always had slaves. So it's not the United States. It's not the West. When people tell you that, they're lying to you. And that's one of the reasons you need to study history. You need to understand the past. You get that strength. First of all, you get context, and people can't tell you simple lies. When people throw into your face stuff like, oh, slavery, the United States is like, when they throw that into your face, so the oppression of the black man, they're counting on the fact. I have a quote here. I'm seeking, I remember it, but I'll pull it up just in case. And it's talking about how certain types of people understand that when you tell stories about the oppression of the ancestors, that makes you much more angry and upset, which means you're controllable. You don't tell about how the ancestors were ingenious and exhibited a great deal of integrity and stick-to-itiveness and were purpose-driven and mission-driven. You don't talk about that kind of stuff, how they overcame oppression. You emphasize how they were oppressed. And when you do that, all that does is makes the current generation upset. And when you make people upset, you make them easier to control. So I'm trying to find that text or that note here in my electronics. And of course, I'm not finding it. I'm gonna try it one more time. But we're talking about the importance of the ancestors. We're talking about, here it is right here. This quote right here. When people misrepresent history to you, remind yourself that hatred and the spirit of sacrifice, are nourished by the image of enslaved ancestors rather than that of liberated grandchildren. I want to read that again, because it'll tie right into what we're talking about here. Hatred and the spirit of sacrifice are nourished by the image of enslaved ancestors rather than that of the liberated grandchildren. In other words, what I put here in my that's a quote from a book called Illuminations by Walter Benjamin. I haven't read that book, but the quote was instructive. And I put here, I say, they like to use hate as a lever to control you. It's a hook in the mouth to reel you into their program. They use your externally generated anger that they generate by throwing it in your face all the time, slavery and stuff like that, to fuel their movement. And this is something that we see all the time, right here, right now, just recently. The shooting that just happened with the trans guy. All the news can think about is don't call him, don't misuse his pronouns after he done killed kids literally praying in a church school, in a Catholic church, in a school program, is my understanding. I'm saying all this, talking about what are we trying to do here with the Focus LBK show? Well, one of the things that we're trying to do is keep our ancestors' images and words and struggles, not their struggles. I'm not trying to nourish hatred and the spirit of sacrifice within you. I'm trying to show how the ancestors overcame all of the obstacles that were thrown in their path. I'm trying to show you how we need to return to, or at least consider strongly, the paths and the ways of our ancestors when it comes to dealing with the current situation. See, in this society, in my opinion, one of the things that we suffer greatly from is that we have discarded as old-timey and irrelevant all of the things that make society strong. And by the way, all those things that make society strong just so happen to be things that make individuals strong. Imagine that, since societies are made up of individuals. Nowadays, people that like to use you and bend you to their will, to their political movement, they like to talk about communities. The black community, the gay community. Can't talk about the white community. I ain't never heard nobody say nothing like that, which is instructive, by the way. What is the white community? Why don't they say the white community? Why do you say the black community but not the white community? Just a thought, just a question. But there's values in the ways of our ancestors. There's value in learning how they overcame things. There's value in reading their words and thoughts and actions. And so because of that, one of the things that I realized that I want to do, we have a section called Words for the Elders. And what we do is we go out and record people, our elders in the community. We do personal history recordings. And one of the things, though, I want to do, what we're trying to do is make this more relevant and make it more accessible. So we don't want you to have to sit down and listen to an hour of a recording if you don't want to. So what we decided was, since we have recently learned how to make these vertical videos, what we have decided is to keep this segment called Words from the Elders, to keep it relevant. We're going to start doing quick blurbs on it, talking to our elders and getting their take on things. That's exactly what we're going to start doing. We want to keep that segment before your eyes regularly, because we think that there's, like I said, there is immense value in understanding the ways of our ancestors and the way they thought, the way they acted. These are the people who were truly under or some sort of racial strife in this country. If you're my age or younger, I honestly think you cannot say that you have been under any kind of racial oppression. In fact, if you're my age and probably 10, 12, 15 years older than me, you can't really say you've been under any kind of racial oppression. You might have caught the tail end of something going out, but I don't know. I think we need to stop using the civil rights era as an excuse for anything, because it's not. The simple facts. You look at Thomas Sowell, for example, who is a black economist. I think he's a fellow at Stanford or something like that, Stanford Institute, one of these big prestigious think tanks. He uses facts and figures routinely to show that what people call the legacy of slavery didn't start till the 1950s. So let's stop talking about black codes and the violence done. The hater taught hate. That's why we gang banging. Who said that? Chuck D. Can't trust it. Can't trust it. The hater taught hate. That's why we gang banging. That's not why we gang banging. No, hater taught hate. We gang banging because our family units have disintegrated into nothing. And young males if they don't have a family at home, they look for a family in the street. And of course, if you find a any facsimile of a family in the street, it's going to be a bad copy of a family, a poor reproduction, a poor facsimile. And they're not going to teach you stuff like you got to do it for yourself if you want it to happen. They're going to teach you stuff like, yo, if anybody say something about your gang, you got to respond violently. Anybody trespass against your territory, you got to respond with violence. That's what they teach. When you become unmoored from your past, you become easy fodder for people that hate you, who want to use hatred and the spirit of sacrifice, who want to arouse hatred and the spirit of sacrifice within you. And that's why they talk about the image of enslaved ancestors all the time. And you notice they can't really find nothing recent. Half the time they be talking about, well, in the 70s and the 60s and in Jim Crow. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, well, guess what? All that's over. If you ain't doing good now, that's on you, partner. One thing that may not be your fault, though, is if you've been brainwashed. I mentioned that trans shooter who killed those 2 little kids up north, up in Minnesota. And when I checked out his manifesto, one of the most obvious things, one of the things that stood out to me, just like hit me in the face, like boom. The trans dude that shot these little kids up said straight up, I wish I had never brainwashed myself into being trans. He said that. He said, I wish I had never brainwashed myself into being trans. And he said, I want to be a girl, but I know that's not possible now. The only thing I have that even remotely looks like being a girl is having long hair. So I got to keep that. I don't want to cut my long hair off. I can't admit defeat. He basically was saying death before detransition. He'd rather he said he want to be known as the monster standing over some innocent kids having just slaughtered them. See what I'm talking about? Being unmoored from reality, unmoored from the past. Every human generation that has ever existed has known that you cannot change your gender. That has never been a thought in the mind of man. There's never been a successful society based on anything like that. And yet now, today, we have ridiculous numbers of people claiming to be trans. And I have always suspected, to be honest, because I'm moored in reality and I'm down to earth and I consider earthly obvious manifestations or causes for things. I said, man, this looks like a social contagion to me. Y'all know what a social contagion is? A social contagion is like the Salem witch trials, for example. There's a lot to that. There was some weird stuff going on, but a lot of times it was like basically peer pressure manifested throughout the community to where this person is supposed to be a witch and okay, I am a witch then. And then somebody said, well, I'm a witch too. Or somebody got an enemy or somebody they don't want to admit some deep, dark secret about, some affair or something. We a witch. It's a social contagion. It's like a virus that floats around in the minds of people. And when you look at the numbers, I read somewhere recently that something like 40% of grade school or like high school students, 40% of them claim to be non-binary or something like that. And most of them are females. Well, you clearly see that can't be genetic. That can't be a real thing. People that don't believe in God, they believe in nature. So they'll say, well, nature, I'm like this because of nature. I was born this way. And I'm like, that makes no sense because nature, if you believe in Darwinism, nature says we need to imbue the individual with a drive, a sex drive to procreate themselves so that the species can continue. And we have to adapt according to the obstacles in our way to make sure that the species continues and gets stronger and better and fitter. Survival of the fittest, they call it. Well, how does that square with being somebody who is trans? How does that, or homosexual? How does that square with that? It doesn't square at all. I don't even believe in Darwinism, not macro evolution, maybe micro evolution. I believe that there's a creator. And if you believe that there's a creator, he made things a certain way. Each person, each animal, each group, each thing reproduces after its own kind. Male and female, he made them. Benjamin Franklin, one of these dead white men who have nothing to teach us, according to some people, said it best. I've said this before. Y'all heard me say this before. I say it again. Ben Franklin said that the man and woman together make a complete human being. Now, anybody out there happily married knows that's true? Raise your hand. The man and woman together makes a complete human being. He said by themselves, a man and a woman apart are as worthless as one half of a pair of scissors. You can't do nothing with half a pair of scissors. You can't even cut nothing right with accuracy. Scissors are made to cut with accuracy. They work together to accomplish their task. That's what men and women are. There's a clear difference between the two. The dude said right there in his memo, his manifesto, that he wished he would have never allowed himself to be brainwashed. He said, I wish I would have never brainwashed myself into being trans. And like I say, man, that's tragic. I'm sad to hear that. I don't get happy because I heard that. But I knew that was something in me was just telling me that must be the case. You must be being told strongly by teachers and the media and educators and psychologists and all these people chiming in your ear trying to tell you you ain't something that you are. And it's like it's just so sad. And it's an example of what happens when you don't heed the lessons of the past. Again, every human society on the planet for the entirety of human existence has known that there are men and women. There were some people in certain societies who were intersex, perhaps, meaning they might have been hermaphrodites or some other thing similar to that. And they were held to be religious people, shamans and such, oracles. But it wasn't them being held to be on a spectrum of gender. They were considered to be unique specimens. And because of that, they inhabited both the male and the female form in some way. And that symbolically meant that they were complete humans in and of themselves in a way that regular men and women aren't. It meant that they had both sides of that spiritual coin embodied in one person. Y'all ever seen the Baphomet, the image of Baphomet? The Baphomet, which is the half male, the hermaphroditic, goat-headed demon with the pentagram or pentacle on him. Supposed to be he's got male and female genitalia. He's got breasts and an erect phallus, as they call it. That was considered to be a union of opposites, combining all the A plus B equals C is a magical talisman, a magical symbol of the union of male and female energies. My understanding of it. It wasn't considered to be a separate thing like it's real. You know what I'm saying? This is the kind of stuff that you know instinctively when you have a conversation with your past. You know instinctively that, yeah, you may be gay or you may be whatever, but there's nobody assigning you gender at birth. You're one or the other. And when you see, this is the thing that gets me about this. When you egg on people like this, and the man said, I wish I had never brainwashed myself into being trans. You can't brainwash yourself into being something that you're not if you know your history, if you have a conversation with the ancestors. I'm trying to keep this on topic because really I'm disgusted and outraged by that situation with that dude shooting up all the kids up there. I mean, that's just here's the thing, though. You can't change that with gun control laws. You can't change that by calling him by his right pronouns or his wrong pronouns, as the case may be. I always try to tell people, man, there's three things in this world that cannot be accounted for and cannot be controlled. And those are people that are evil, people that are crazy. I had an acronym for it, ECC, evil, criminal, and crazy. If you making laws trying to control people that are ECCs, evil, criminal, or crazy, you're going to fail every time. Because guess what? Evil people do evil. That's what they like to do. Making a law about something saying don't do this because it's evil. They like evil. They embrace evil. They seek after evil. There are people who do evil on purpose to harm your faith in God. You know what I'm saying? There's crazy people out there. Evil people are one thing, and there's crazy people. Crazy people, you can't make a law that crazy people respect. If a dude thinks he's Napoleon, do you really think he cares about the law in today's time? If he don't even know who he is, he's crazy. Evil, crazy, and criminals. I need not explain that criminals don't care about the law. Do I have to explain that to somebody? Criminals, by definition, are people who break the law. Most criminals know good and well they breaking the law. They choose that lifestyle. They like it. Just like evil people delight in doing evil. Criminals delight in doing crime. Crazy people delight in doing crazy stuff. So whatever law you put on the book ain't going to change none of that. It's not going to affect anybody. Any of those ECCs. It's going to affect people like me and you who try to follow the law and who are not evil, crazy, and criminals. So I don't even want to hear nobody talking about gun control laws. It ain't going to do nothing. What you got to do is bring back some of the institutions that we had back in the day. Everybody likes to be dismissive of the past because it's past. The past worked. Some of the stuff we did in the past worked. We had houses for the mentally ill people. We had crazy houses, they used to call them. That's not PC to say it. They had insane asylums. Why do they have insane asylums? Because it is not compassionate to let insane people hang around the parking lot up here on Avenue Q by the Walmart. That's why. It's not compassionate to do that. Now, I know that those institutions were imperfect and there were abuses that were perpetrated in some, many, if not all of them. But you have to understand human nature. We are fallen creatures. We don't do things perfectly. It's beyond us. But you at least try the things that work. It's far better to have somebody that needs to be institutionalized in an institution than it is to so-called compassionately let them roam the street and compassionately give them needles to inject themselves with drugs because it's compassionate. Take somebody who is struggling with their sexuality and fill their head full of stuff that helps them brainwash themselves, is what the man said. Helps them brainwash themselves into being something that they not. That's worsening the situation. That is not helping him or anybody around him. And I don't understand how we can't understand that. It's because we're completely unmoored from reality. The past is reality. You know what I'm saying? You can look at the struggles that people went through. You can read diaries and books and autobiographies and history books, knowing that history is written by the victors. History is a lie agreed upon, but you gotta know how to sift through that stuff, man. And the easiest way to do that is to remember your immediate ancestors' struggles, what they told you, what you saw them go through, what your mama told you that your grandpa and them went through, and your daddy told you that his mom and daddy went through. And it can't all be about how the white man is evil. Because guess what? All men are evil. And when I say men, that's mankind. Male and female, he created them together. They are man. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I say we're going to redouble. We was talking about a few weeks ago when we recorded the episode on what can we do to stop some of this violence, this gun violence. And I said that we were going to redouble our efforts. We do some volunteering here and there. A couple of things that we feel make a difference, and we're going to continue to do that and try to get better with that. One of the things that we're going to do, we're going to redouble our effort on bringing the words of our elders to the forefront. Now, elders make mistakes too. I'm not saying they're perfect. I'm saying the less emphasis you give on remembering what your ancestors' ingenuity and their courage and their hard work and their effort and their struggle, when you forget about that, you leave yourself open to being brainwashed by people who want to make you filled with hatred and anger so they can control you to do their bidding. And their bidding, they may not always grab you by the neck and direct you around and tell you what they want to do. Sometimes they just keep throwing it out there. So-and-so is a dictator. So-and-so, somebody need to take care of him. So they're Nazis. When you use that kind of language, you're pushing people in a direction on purpose. Anytime you want to kill something, you first have to dehumanize it. That's one of the lessons of history. You're talking about being historical minded. One of the biggest lessons of history that we need to think about is anytime you wish to kill somebody, you first dehumanize them. You don't call them what they are. You don't call them children of God. You call them names like spics, niggers, Jews, kikes. Not Jews, because that's just a regular name. But you see what I'm saying? You demonize people. Japs, slants, gooks. You say all that kind of stuff because it takes away from the humanity of the person that you're trying to kill. And usually it's the government that encourages that kind of language. Oh, another word they use to dehumanize something they want you to kill, fetus. That one hit somebody hard. They mad at me, boy. I tell you what. You gonna call the thing that come out of a human and say it's not a human. Something that two humans have to create together that grows on its own, that has its own separate DNA from the moment of conception, but it's a fetus. It's not a human. That's them terms they like you to use when they want you to kill something. Kill somebody. Yet another one of the lessons of history. Oh boy, I tell you what. That's why I really didn't even know what to talk about today. And I didn't want to talk about this trans dude. But man, I don't know. Sometimes you have to put things out there, and you have to do it in a way that's not intended to provoke anybody. We're intended to correct, to get some discussion going, some realistic, actual, fact-driven discussion about things. Not no phantasmagorical, unachievable fantasy land stuff about who you are and what you are. That's a recipe for making people unhappy. That's a recipe for making people hate their neighbors. What is it other than demonic to say, I want to be the person that stands over these children? That's what the dude said. I want to be the person standing over these children, bringing hurt and pain and fear to them. Really? That's what you want? Boy, I tell you what, I just can't even. I might be a fool, because in the Bible, Jesus says something to the effect of, these little ones, meaning the children, are innocent, blameless little creatures, and that he said anybody who does harm to them, it would be better if they tie a millstone, a heavy grindstone around their neck and jump in the ocean. He said you're going to do better tying a rock around your neck and jumping in the ocean than it's going to be better for you to do that than for you to harm a child. And apparently I must be a fool, because I would never, and I don't know anybody in real life who would ever do something like that, who would write in Cyrillic, in Russian language, by the way, for a dude that's not even Russian, has no ties to Russia. What? You're going to write that you want to be the person standing over these kids hurting them. You want them to see that in you and see yourself reflected in their eye. Come on. Well, I believe what Jesus said about the millstone, so that fella must have it pretty bad right about now. And you know what? It strikes me as I say that this fella had it pretty bad during life. And the people who egged him on with this nonsense, I think some of the blame is on them. There was a case a long time ago where some dude's girlfriend was egging him, texting him back and forth, commit suicide, go on and do it. And he did it. And they were like, I think we could charge her. Well, she clearly is. You can make the case that he shouldn't do that. But if you know somebody's in a fragile state of mind and you keep on urging them to do stuff, to do evil things, you're really whispering in somebody's ear demonic things for them to do when they're in a weakened state. That's really how you like to roll. You really like to get on TV and spout falsehoods, known falsehoods that have no historical basis, no biological basis in the history of mankind. You really, that's you? Okay. Be you then. Do you, boo. As for me and mine, I think we're going to stick with trying to learn and understand the lessons that our ancestors have imparted to us. That we're going to stick with trying to serve Almighty God, even though we flawed individual vessels and we can never serve him properly. We'll keep trying. I always think about the little drummer boy when I think about serving God. Y'all remember that Christmas song, the little drummer boy say, I played my best for him. He say, pa-rumpa-pumpa. He say, I ain't got nothing to give the king, the newborn king. I'm poor, man. I'm a little dude. I be playing. In other words, in modern day parlance, he would be a street drummer. He'd be one of these dudes playing buckets on the street. You know, y'all ever seen them dudes that play buckets? That's the little drummer boy. He say, man, I ain't even got nothing to give the newborn king. All I got is these beats right here. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to play these drums like I can, as best I can. Pa-rumpa-pumpa. Every time I think about that, that's what I think of, man. Like, we all imperfect individual vessels. We're all sinners and fallen creatures. But that don't mean you give into that nature. That means you try to strive and be Christ-like. That means I used to wonder, you read the Bible, it say, Jesus say his kingdom is not of this world. And I used to take that just to mean that it was in heaven. But actually, he say the kingdom of God is within you. And I've been thinking like, well, one of the things he might have meant by that, or could have meant, I think he meant, is that when you allow the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, Jesus' example, don't get all metaphysical if you don't want to. Just say the Spirit in which Jesus did things is what it is. If you allow the Spirit in which Jesus operated on this planet to be in your heart and make you be your motivational factor, the thing that puts the fire under you, and you trying to follow that example, that Spirit, the things you do them in the Spirit that Jesus did them in. Is that not heaven? Is that not the kingdom of heaven in your inside of you? And will not the kingdom of heaven begin to blossom around you? I mean, it seemed like it would. Now, how does that fit with telling people all the negative parts about slavery so you can make them mad so they can do what you want them to do? How does that comport with whispering in some confused soul's ear about stuff that you know he ain't, telling him what he is and you know he ain't, making him even more confused, mutilating their bodies and stuff? Not only mutilating their minds and bodies, but their spirits, to the point where they want to be the evil presence slaughtering children. Man, who, if Jesus's kingdom is when you have his Spirit inside you and that animates you, then who kingdom is that? And anybody doing that kind of negative activity, whispering in the ears and spouting the falsehoods about stuff you know ain't true, confuse people even more. Man, I'm scared to be that person. Y'all ain't scared to be you? I guess, well, they don't believe in God anyway, I guess. I literally am terrified of doing something like that. Do you not know you're going to face judgment for that? Well, you don't, because they don't believe in God. The people that would do that, you check them out, they're almost always atheists. They think everything is just an accident. If you're an atheist and you don't believe that God exists, then everything is permissible, because there's no higher source above you that said, no, don't do that. Everything that's in your heart is fine to do. That's why we was talking about the Baphomet earlier. The Baphomet sigil, half man, half woman, with goat-like horns and hoofs, with the pentagram or the pentangle or whatever it is on him. That's the kind of stuff that they encourage. You see what I'm saying? If you don't believe in God, then who is giving you the reason to be good? Baphomet, Jesus say, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Baphomet, Satan, the adversary, says, do what thou wilt. Do what you want to do. Do what you bad enough to do. Be that evil specter standing over dead children, somehow glorying in that. Any who ancestors ever told them that? Raise your hand if your ancestors ever approved of that. Raise your hand if your ancestors was atheists. Very few people. I just don't even know no more, man. That's all we gonna do. We're gonna try to keep doing our mission here at the Focus LBK show, which, as I have enunciated and elucidated over the last 30 minutes or so, our mission here, one of the things that we strongly seek to do is to be a link to the past. We don't come from any age where we remember people who used to plow fields with a mule. But I remember things that today, young people today don't remember. I remember when you could fly, when you could just walk up to the counter at the airport and pay cash and say, hey, when's the next flight to Dallas? Oh yeah, let me get on that. And I don't recall there might have been a metal detector or something there. There wasn't no security like that. And you could take your whole family and go to the gate area and sit down and talk until you left. You know what I'm saying? That's why I don't remember I don't remember all that security stuff there. It might have been a metal detector. They might have had a metal detector wand on it or something. You know what I'm saying? I remember when $20, I was talking to my coworker. So I remember when $20, just 30 years ago when I was in college, $20, you was set for the weekend. If you had 20 bones in your pocket on Friday when class let out, man, you could get beer, burgers, gas, cigars, all the stuff that young fools like me used to love to partake in. You could get with about $10, $12. $10 worth of gas was over half a tank of gas. I had a big car. $10 used to fill me halfway up. A 40 ounce of something terrible was 99 cents. A 40 ounce of something I couldn't drink today was 99 cents. A Whopper, which was this big, it was a big old hamburger that you only could eat one, was 99 cents. Oddly enough, it was $1.25 or $1.23 or something like that with cheese. I was like, dang, the slice of cheese costs 25% of the cost of the Whopper. Anyway, those things don't exist no more because we've been told that you need to have all these government programs that they have to pay for. They don't pay for them with cash. They print money. When you print money, that causes inflation. Guess what? Our ancestors and these old white men known as the founding fathers knew all about inflation and said you should never have a central bank. And we disregarded that. And now we mad because our standard of living has fallen. You got a whole generation of young people blaming it on the boomers. Like, how about you blame it on some of your social programs too? USAID and all them. That stuff's been known for decades. So that's why I say we try to get the right lessons from the past. We try to keep the past continually in our face in the present. So look forward to doing some of this new programming that we're going to do for y'all. I hate to say programming because that seems like you programming people. That's people always say that they call it programming for a reason. Okay, so we ain't gonna call it that. We're gonna call it content. But then again, it's more than content. We're trying to do something that helps. We're trying to do something that means something. Content is just ephemeral, transitory fluff. When you say content, that's what comes to my mind. I'm talking about we trying to do something meaningful, man. We're trying to make some content that helps. Content with soul, content with heart. That's what we're trying to do here. The Focus LBK show. Yeah, folks, if you appreciate our mission and what we're trying to do, man, why don't you become a paid subscriber? Because like I said, we're going to start elevating the content. Our content is already dope, but we're going to make it doper. I think there's room for improvement. If y'all have some suggestions for things that we should improve, let us know. We would love to know. We'd love to hear from you. Any feedback. You can leave me a comment and say you suck. I'll be like, hey, I got a comment. Look at that. Yeah. So anyway, leave a comment down there. If you heard something useful here, please spread it around, share it. If you heard something that upset you, good. Sometimes it's time to be upset because we don't mean it in a way to upset people. We're trying to foster real discussion about things. So if you're upset, I guess you'll probably discuss it. All right, folks, thank you for tuning in. As always, I'm your brother, Robert Jenkins, and this is the Focus LBK Show. And as we close it on out, I want to say peace.